In our previous set of videos, we took a look at the relationship between the shape of the U.S. yield curve and future U.S. economic growth. And the key finding was that the private sector yield curve does a better job of forecasting future growth than does the public sector curve. So in this video, we take that same concept, but we apply it to a total of 23 different currencies that collectively cover about 88% of the world's economy. And so normally, when we show a graph in our videos, we show a graph with perhaps 1, 2, maybe maximum 3 lines so as not to overwhelm you with information. But this time we make an exception. We're going to show you a graph that shows the relationship between yield curve shape and future GDP growth for all 23 countries simultaneously. So here it is. And yes, I would freely admit this graph is an absolute mess to look at. But when you look at it closely, you notice something incredibly interesting and I think very, very meaningful, which is that all 23 of those lines are positive for a significant portion of this graph, which means that essentially from 6 months out to 15 months out, every single one of those yield curves has historically shown a positive relationship between the shape of that yield curve and future GDP growth. Now, if it were true that the shape of the yield curve has just a sort of random relationship with future GDP growth, the probability that any of these yield curves would be positive or negative is about 50-50. So the likelihood that all 23 of them would simultaneously be positive is equal to 1 divided by 2 to the 23rd power, which is basically 1 over about 8.3 million. So in other words, there seems to be a very strong relationship, not just in the United States, but all around the world between yield curve shape and subsequent GDP growth. So that is an interesting finding by itself, but in our next video, we're going to take a closer look. We're going to take a look at what those 23 yield curves are telling us about where the economy is likely to go around the world in the years 2020 and 2021. I'm Eric Norland, Senior Economist with the CME Group in London.